At number 10, we have Libya with a CPI score of 17. Libya is a nation that experienced the Arab Spring upheaval in 2011, and it continues to bear the effects of the movement. Following the removal of its former ruler, Muammar Gaddafi, Libya descended into a state of civil disorder and strife between factions. Now, the ensuing turbulence has impacted the country's political landscape, resulting in an unchecked rise of corruption. The country at number 9 is North Korea with a CPI score of 17 also. The dictatorial and totalitarian regime of North Korea has created a shroud of mystery around the country, leaving the outside world with very limited knowledge to actually what goes on in the country. As a result, there is just a complete lack of transparency in areas such as food security and human rights, allowing for corruption to spread. And despite North Korea's leader Kim Jong-un vowing to eradicate corruption, it has been deeply rooted in the country. Also, North Korea's ranking as the last country on a list of 194 nations in a Trace International report is also a testament to this sad reality. The country scored high on risk for crucial indicators, including civil society oversight capacity and the potential for business to government bribes. From there, let's take a look at Haiti. Its CPI score is also 17. Haiti has been grappling with a severe social crisis since the devastating quake of 2010, from which the country has yet to fully recover from. It caused significant damage to the economy and infrastructure, leaving a lasting impact. Also, corruption has significantly impacted the state's finances since the year 2011. Organized and heavily armed gangs have continued to expand their control, worsening the already fragile political stability of the country. Equatorial Guinea comes in at the number 7 spot. Their CPI score is tied with several other countries at 17. Equatorial Guinea's corruption issues can be traced back to the authoritarian regime, with the president and his close network of elites living a very luxurious life fueled by the country's oil revenue. Mismanagement of funds and the absence of the rule of law have resulted in rampant corruption, arbitrary detentions, as well as unjust trials. Back in 2021, a French court found Théodore Obiang Mangyu, the vice president of Equatorial Guinea and the president's son, guilty of embezzlement. He was notably caught flaunting his lavish lifestyle all over social media, which included him owning a Rolls-Royce Phantom, 2 Bentleys, a Maybach, a Porsche, a Ferrari, and a Maserati, as well as 2 Bugattis. Yeah, he was living large. Number 6 leads us to Burundi. Its CPI score is 17 as well. Despite various attempts to promote transparency and good governance in Burundi, corruption continues to thrive in the country. Corruption is deeply ingrained in the system, with practices such as bribery and cronyism trickling down from high-ranking officials all the way to public employees at the street level. Burundi's ruling party has implemented neo-patrimonialism policies that have resulted in low government rankings, and this leads to a decline in foreign investment and triggering social unrest. The country's inability to combat corruption in both political and social contexts has kept Burundi's corruption levels high, contributing to its unfavorable ranking in this episode. Number 5, Yemen. Its CPI score is 16. Yemen's protracted civil war has frequently been characterized as a proxy conflict between Saudi Arabia and Iran. I find that pretty interesting. Regardless of the war's true nature though, the situation in Yemen has resulted in a humanitarian crisis, with children bearing the brunt of the suffering. More than 500,000 children below the age of 5 years old suffer from severe malnutrition, and every 10 minutes, a child under the age of 5 years old loses their life from preventable causes. There is definitely a lack of government accountability and a non-existent system of control there. Patronage networks control the country's civil affairs, leading to an excessive number of ghost workers and placing an additional burden on the state's finances. This network also supervises government contracts and frequently exploits small businesses through arbitrary fines. Coming down to the number 4 spot, we have Venezuela. Its CPI score is 14. With more than 300 billion barrels of oil, Venezuela is rich in oil and other natural resources, which have contributed to the political instability and socioeconomic crisis. And of course, the widespread corruption. The country's food insecurity, overpopulation, and declining infrastructure have further exacerbated this whole situation. And the country's government officials and their family members have faced accusations of involvement in illicit activities, including drug trafficking. Some of the proceeds from the activities are believed to have been used to support President Maduro's 2013 presidential campaign. Syria comes up next. Its CPI score is 13. The Syrian civil war erupted as a part of a larger movement across the Middle East and North Africa known as the Arab Spring, and it involves ongoing conflicts between military and insurgent forces in Syria. Despite the influx of funds and arms to opposing forces and support from international institutions, relief funds in Syria have often been mismanaged due to the corruption by officials. Bribery as well as solicitation are the most common forms of corruption in the country. Coming down to the number 2 spot, here we have South Sudan with a CPI score of 13. South Sudan, despite being the world's youngest country where 70% of the population are under 30 years of age, has been plagued with corruption as rampant as other most corrupt countries globally. The country, which is rich in oil, gained independence on July 9th, 2011. But the outbreak of a civil war in December 2013 saw the country's government leaders involved in bribery. The war created a conducive environment for corruption to thrive, and government officials have been accused of embezzling over $74 million in the last couple years alone. President Salva Kiir confirmed that over $4 billion was looted from the state through bureaucratic corruption, patronage, as well as embezzlement since the year 2012. Coming down to the number 1 spot, here we have Somalia. Its CPI score is 12. Somalia has consistently ranked among the world's 3 most corrupt countries due to ongoing conflict, insecurity, and the absence of a central government. And the country's reputation for piracy has also amplified this whole crisis. Corruption has contributed significantly to the socioeconomic problem that impacts both locals as well as visitors to the country. A United Nations report reveals that more than 70% of Somalia's government assets have been siphoned off and used for private gain. Coming in at the number 10 spot, we have Azerbaijan. Their CPI score is 23. Now, when we look at Azerbaijan, it's situated between Eastern Europe and Western Asia, and it's a country that boasts a plethora of modern and ancient marvels, really. Baku, its capital city, is filled with a blend of futuristic and historical edifices. However, despite its allure, Azerbaijan's business compliance risks and political corruption hinder foreign direct investments and tourism. Like, when we take a look at the oil sector corruption in Azerbaijan, it's primarily attributed to patronage. And although there exists an anti-corruption mandate in the country, well, the frail judiciary empowers corrupt officials and police to act with impunity, resulting in the prevalent practices such as extortion and bribery. The country at number 9 is Sudan. Its CPI score is 22. Sudan is definitely a captivating nation, brimming with tourist attractions, boasting more pyramids, as a matter of fact, than Egypt. Yeah, I know, right? Very surprising. Either way, it was once Africa's largest country and is rich in mineral deposits such as gold, iron ore, and other base metals. Unfortunately though, despite its wealth, many Sudanese communities have yet to reap the benefits. The prevalence of cronyism and patronage has resulted in government officials having direct or indirect ownership stakes in numerous companies, thereby compromising the economy. On top of that, a lack of transparency has exacerbated the frequency of civil servants demanding bribes from both citizens and private enterprises in exchange for services they are legally entitled to. Eritrea comes next at number 8. Its CPI score is 22. Located in the Horn of Africa, this small country has one of the most militarized populations on the continent, with over 20% serving in the armed forces. This has led to an inflated military workforce, putting pressure on the national budget. Eritrea is plagued by pervasive corruption, with patronage and cronyism being the most prevalent forms of corruption. And citizens seeking civil or judicial services have often been asked for a bribe or gift in return. Also, high-ranking military officials and generals exert significant control over the population, contributing to the widespread corruption and illegal activities in the country. And then in addition to that, police officers have been accused of abusing their positions as civil servants, frequently facilitating the release of their friends and family from prison as a gift. And the same practice is also carried out for private citizens who can afford it. Moving on to number 7, Guinea-Bissau. Their CPI score is 21. Guinea-Bissau, also one of the smaller African nations, is unfortunately ranked among the most corrupt countries on the continent. Despite its lush national parks and diverse wildlife, this West African nation is plagued by rampant corruption within its security forces. The country's judicial system has been severely impacted by government mismanagement and lack of accountability, making it difficult to investigate and prosecute criminal activities. Also, corruption in Guinea-Bissau is not limited to the upper echelons of government. Many citizens have reported being asked to pay a bribe by public officials at least once. The nation at the number 6 spot is the Republic of Congo. It has a CPI score of 21. Congo-Brazzaville, also known as the Republic of Congo, should not be confused with DRC. It's a different nation. This Central African country is home to the world's second largest rainforest and the renowned Pygmy tribe. Additionally, Congo has a wealth of mineral resources, including copper and cobalt, and Congo's diverse flora and fauna make it an attractive tourist destination. However, corruption is a significant obstacle to the growth of the tourism industry. The president's strong grip on power has made the state vulnerable to patronage and a compromised judicial system. Coming in at the number 5 spot with a CPI score of 20, we have DRC. The Democratic Republic of Congo, or DRC, boasts abundant mineral resources, including gold, diamonds, cobalt, tin, copper, and coltan. However, the DRC remains among 5 poorest countries globally. Corruption is widespread in the DRC and affects all levels of government and economic sectors. Clientelism, patronage, and rent-seeking practices have undermined fair competition and made the country unappealing to a lot of foreign investors. From there, moving into number 4, we have Turkmenistan. It has a CPI score of 19. Turkmenistan is a landlocked country in Central Asia, and it's renowned for its historical archaeological sites such as Nisa and Merv, which serve as significant stops along the ancient Silk Road. And as such, the country definitely has tremendous tourism potential. Nevertheless, though, corruption in government, as well as the allocation of licenses, have been pervasive in Turkmenistan for an extended period. The president's family members and close associates occupy high-ranking positions in politics, education, and trade. The country that comes in at number 3 is Nicaragua. Its CPI score is 19. Nicaragua is a Central American country famous for its stunning lakes and volcanoes, and it's often overlooked a lot by tourists. However, the country has come under scrutiny for allegations of political repression and a lack of transparency regarding the state budget. Corruption in Nicaragua is pervasive, with political power monopolized by President Daniel Ortega and his wife, Vice President Rosario Murillo. This type of cronyism and nepotism have severe consequences on the electoral system and the protection of human rights. Coming down to the number 2 spot, this country is Comoros, with a CPI score also of 19. Comoros is an archipelago in the Mozambique Channel, and it offers stunning beaches, lush cliffs, and quaint colonial coastal towns, yet it's often overlooked a lot of times by tourists. The country's lack of infrastructure and weak governance systems have contributed to the growing issue of corruption in Comoros. From judiciary to civil servants and security forces, corruption is rampant in the country. Citizens often have to pay bribes to evade regulations, obtain fake police reports, and avoid arrests. Ending this episode off at number 1, we have Chad. This country's CPI score is 19. Chad is a landlocked African country rich in oil, gold, and uranium. The country has been alleged to have high levels of corruption, from the quasi-independent judicial system, which is often influenced by government officials, to punitive police behavior. Corruption in Chad has been normalized though, and it is often expected for locals and tourists to pay bribes to police and other state forces when crossing checkpoints. All this has led to Chad being one of the poorest countries in the world, although an oil pipeline from Chad to neighboring Cameroon generates billions of dollars every single year.